Welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of my small business negotiation course. If you missed part 1, then you can find the link to that in the show notes. Now that you have an understanding of the impact that negotiation can have on your business, I want to dive into what negotiation really is, where you can use it, and how it actually works. As I said in the last video, negotiation is a foundational business skill, and if you own a business, you owe it to yourself and your business to learn how to do it well. Just like communication skills, enhancing your understanding and your practice of negotiation can help you in a lot of areas of your life, even outside of your business. But before we get there, you have to get over your misconceptions about negotiation, which is what we're going to talk about in this video. Now, quick reminder that in the show notes, you'll find links to the free and paid versions of the workbook that goes along with this course. The paid version is just $20 Canadian, and it comes with a set of templates and extra video content to help you prepare for tough negotiations. So now that you have an understanding of the impact that negotiation can have on your life, I want to dive into what negotiation actually is, where you can use it, and how it really works. As I said in the last video, negotiation is a foundational business skill. If you own a business, large or small, you owe it to yourself and your business to learn how to do it well. But just like communication skills, you're going to find that enhancing your understanding and practice of negotiation can really help you in many areas of your life, even outside of your business. But before you can get there, you do need to get over your misconceptions about negotiation. So to do that, we're going to move on to the next exercise in your workbook. Without even thinking about it, I want you to write down the first 3 words or phrases that come to mind when you think about business negotiation. Now, this is an important question. So even if you're just listening to this workshop while you're doing other things, mentally take note of the first 3 things that pop into your head. And I'm going to give you about 15 seconds or so to do that. So if you're like most women, your first thought or 2 were probably really emotional in nature and probably had to do with your own insecurity to do with negotiation. But when we get past the emotional perceptions, we find that women tend to associate negotiation with a very specific set of circumstances and characteristics. First, we assume that we'll be under pressure to make a quick decision and that our decisions will be hard to make. We assume that stakes are always high and that if we mess up, the potential failure would have a huge impact on our business. We also assume that the process will be full of dirty tricks, game playing, dishonesty, and aggressive tactics that feel misaligned to the way that we run our businesses and our lives. And finally, we assume that all negotiations have a winner and a loser. Now, if you wrote down or thought about characteristics like these, that's really not surprising. And that's because the negotiations that we hear about the most are actually the awful ones that are characterized by these factors. What you're thinking about has a name. It's called distributive negotiation, and it is a legitimate approach to negotiation under a certain set of circumstances. Typically, it's used when the negotiation is competitive and when there's a single issue that is the primary focus for both parties. Typically, that's price. This type of negotiation is fixed pie in nature. It's the idea that the size of the pie can't change, so you can win the negotiation by getting a bigger slice of the pie. So it's a win-lose approach to negotiation where the goal is kind of that winner take all or winner take as much as possible kind of approach. In this workshop, you're not going to be learning negotiation strategies for distributive negotiation. And that's because 99% of the negotiations you will engage in as a business owner are not distributive. Now, that's not to say you won't encounter them. You probably will. If you ever buy a piece of real estate or have the misfortune to go through a high conflict divorce, or if your business eventually becomes so important that it's the subject of a hostile takeover. The good news is, if you find yourself in any of those circumstances, you will have a real estate agent or a lawyer by your side to help you navigate the strategies necessary for a distributive negotiation. But this is not the type of negotiation you need to build your skills in. So let's talk about what negotiation really looks like for a business owner. I want to start with a standard definition of negotiation, a give and take process of 2 parties working towards an agreement from different starting positions. Okay, first of all, a give and take process. Let's stop there. Give and take means that you go back and forth and trade items of value to each person. Next, it says two parties working toward an agreement. The very definition of negotiation includes the word agreement, and the process assumes that agreement is the goal. The final piece speaks to the starting point that both parties are coming at the negotiation from different positions and with different priorities. Now, when we consider negotiation in this light, it feels very different. It feels like it's an opportunity to build a relationship, respect, and mutual benefit. And that's exactly the kind of negotiation that you are going to spend most of your career engaged in. The name for this is integrative negotiation. It's collaborative by nature because it's not just an argument about who gets more or a better price. Instead, it's an approach that recognizes that multiple issues are on the table and that each party has different priorities, different items that are of more or less value to each person. Integrative negotiations are often creative by nature, where both parties come to the negotiation with their priorities in hand, but walk away with benefits that often exceed what they were hoping for. And that's because the goal here is really to strengthen the relationship by ensuring both parties are respected and secure mutual benefits that are priorities for them. As entrepreneurs, it's important to open your eyes and see all of the opportunities that you have to negotiate. Now, these are just some of the people within your business that you can explore negotiating with. With clients, depending on the nature of your business, you might negotiate price, quality, timelines, deliverables, and outcomes. With your suppliers, things like price, delivery schedule, storage, quality, deliverables, those might be terms that you explore. Now, in most businesses, there are informal and formal partnerships where money may not exchange hands, but there are mutual benefits to gain. So in today's economy, if you're operating using social media, you might partner with other entrepreneurs to expand your reach and cross-promote your business. Regardless of whether we're talking about formal or informal partnerships, things like roles and responsibilities, schedules, priorities, marketing details, and ownership or commissions might come up as terms and benefits to negotiate. And of course, as you grow and expand your business, negotiation is a key skill that you need to be able to hire, manage, and unfortunately, in some cases, terminate your employees. So now pick up your workbook one more time, and I'd like you to write down 3 specific people in your life who are in some way involved in your business with whom you should negotiate, even in a small way. And then beside their name, I want you to write down at least one thing that you'd like to negotiate with them. So if you need a few minutes, just pause the video and take the time that you need to write down some ideas. When I talk to women entrepreneurs, I make it a point to always cover both personal and business negotiation. And this is because we don't often get the benefit of only focusing on our businesses. As women, our roles as partners, parents, children, and friends, those are unavoidable roles that we need to balance within our lives and with our businesses. So I appreciate that this was recognized by that Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub in their report, because as we think about the growth, we remain limited and, quite frankly, under pressure by the societal expectations that hold us accountable for the lion's share of domestic responsibilities, raising children, caring for our parents, maintaining households, remembering appointments. Many women that I know say that they operate like the central nervous system in their homes. Their family members are like arms and legs, they'll help, but not unless the central nervous system, you, send a signal in the form of a request or expectation. And so as you learn to negotiate, I also want you to think about where you can use these skills in the other half of your life. Within your immediate family, you can negotiate the roles associated with paying bills, maintaining your property, parenting, the responsibilities and philosophies, chores and routines. Across your extended family, you can negotiate for shared child and elder care support, the norms around how, when, and where holidays and special occasions are held, and boundaries that can preserve your relationships with your loved ones. I'd say your friends are similar to your extended family, and so always remember you can negotiate with them over norms about where you gather, the support and boundaries that help you be good to one another. And of course, if you're engaged in your community, whether you're chair of the board of directors, or a volunteer parent shuttling your kids' hockey team around, you can negotiate there too. Think about things like what you say yes to, deadlines, and the financial commitments that are often expected of volunteers. Now, I'm not going to take the time to ask you to consider the people in your personal life that you should be negotiating with, but I did want to plant that seed with you and remind you that this skill extends well beyond your workday and well beyond your business. Because regardless of where you're negotiating, when one of the priorities is maintaining your relationship with the other person, which it is in personal negotiation, the process is exactly the same. So there are 4 stages in integrative negotiation: planning, discovery, problem solving, and confirming. I love this quote. Albert Einstein once said, "If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions." And that's an important way of thinking of negotiation. Too often we rush into the negotiation part of negotiation, or the problem solving stage, but we actually need to get better and spend more time in the early stages of planning and discovery so that when we get to the problem solving stage, it's actually clear what needs to be solved. Now, the planning stage is one that women often struggle with. And this is because we have generally spent our lives figuring out what other people want and need from us, not what we want and need from others. So inside this course in your negotiation toolkit, I've provided a few tools that really help you work through the process of identifying what you want out of a negotiation and then build a strategy around what you will and won't accept. So again, rather than building these tools into the workshop where you may or may not have a specific negotiation that you have in mind right now, I've created them as standalone videos and worksheets. And that's because, of course, you're going to want to go back and use them to prepare for every single negotiation that you do until this process becomes second nature to you. Now, I've been negotiating for years and I still follow the process exactly because it's actually a methodology that really works. So you'll start by brainstorming everything that you think is possible in the negotiation, all the benefits, all the terms that you might ask for, and everything that the other person might be interested in. This is important because too often we narrow our scope to just the most important things, which really constricts us in the negotiation. The power of an integrative negotiation is that you have the opportunity to bundle a whole package of benefits that would be of value to each of you. But to do this in the negotiation, to be agile, you need to take the time to dream big beforehand. After you brainstorm ideas, the next step is really prioritizing what you actually want and what you want to offer. And so again, the tools that I've provided help you to create specific lists of priorities, the major priorities, and then the optional items to keep you on track in your negotiation. Within each of your top priorities, you always need to define 2 things. First, what you'd love to get, not the minimum level, but what you'd love to get, a generous offer. And then second, that level at which you'd walk away. So what's your deal breaker level, the lowest level that you could still say yes to? And then finally, it's important going in to know all of the little things, all the things that you might offer or that you might be interested in, again, in a specific order of priority. Because if you're in a negotiation and you feel compelled to add on, you want to make sure that you're sweetening the pie with add-on items that really have low value to you, but are of high value to the other person. And once you're in the negotiation conversation, you want to try and spend as much time as possible in discovery. As you'll learn later in the workshop, this should actually come really easily to you as a woman. But your goal here is to engage in a conversation that gets you beyond what you want and moves toward why you want it. If you and the other person have a conversation about your priorities and why they matter, you will set yourself up for a very successful negotiation. Discovery is exactly as it sounds, an opportunity to learn more about the other person, what motivates them, and what they'll find valuable about what you offer. That and the reverse, it's important for the other person to hear from you about what your priorities are, why they matter, and why you value your business relationship with them. So when you start your conversation in discovery, you're able to quickly identify areas where you share values and where there's a natural opportunity for agreement. Within all of the priorities that you identify, there will be a number of them that are integrative items where you and the other person can both benefit from agreeing on that item at that level. Maybe it's really important to you, but low value to the other person, or vice versa. And so it becomes an easy yes. There are also items in every negotiation which are distributive items. Price is often, but not always, one of those items. And I want to emphasize that because women will tend to assume price is a distributive issue when it might not be. In other words, the other person might have zero issue with your ideal price, so long as you deliver on their timeline. So be careful to not make assumptions, but instead use the discovery phase to determine where there's alignment and where items may need to be divided. A good negotiation identifies a number of points of agreement first before going back and forth on the distributive items. If you build a foundation of agreement on a number of benefits, it becomes a lot easier to go back and forth and consider concessions related to the benefits that are a little bit harder to agree on. And yes, often it takes some creative flair to get to yes. That might involve including a few extras. But if you've done your planning work, you'll know exactly what items you can throw into the deal without creating a lot of work for yourself. Now, the final stage is confirming. And unfortunately, a failure to confirm can mean failure to actually see the benefits of all of the work you just did to prepare and negotiate. Confirming means different things depending on the level of agreement needed. So in my house, confirming involves everyone writing their names next to the agreed upon chores on our family whiteboard. For some business negotiations, an email exchange is enough. For example, hi, Joanne, I want to confirm the specific points that we discussed today and make sure we both have a copy of what we agreed to. Can you please review the notes below and confirm by email that they capture our discussion and agreement? That's confirming. Now, confirming can also be a much more formal process involving legal updates to your contract and service agreements. If that's the case, then I'd still urge you to send a follow-up email, but add a note that says once they confirm, you'll be sharing those terms with your legal counsel so that they can update your agreement formally. This is a very important step in negotiation because it finalizes the new or revised terms under which you and the other person will work. By putting those terms in writing, you protect yourself against misinterpretation and arm yourself with evidence to remind the other person of the terms you agreed to. By using this methodology, you will be able to proceed through your negotiations with confidence every single time. Because remember when I talked about self-efficacy and your belief that you can negotiate effectively? Well, by now, you should already be feeling a little more confident that you know what to expect and that you have the right tools to prepare for success.